everybody, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, October the 16th, 2024. And it's World War One Wednesday. Number 23, this one. Used to be Wingnut Wings Wednesday, now it's World War One Wednesday. One day it might be Wingnut Wings Wednesday again. As a lot of you know, I've had a few issues around, lots and lots of issues, more issues than you know about, but you know about enough of them. And as it is today, as I say, it's Wednesday, it's the 16th of October, it's lunchtime, and I'm going to have to get something out for you tonight for World War One Wednesday even. So I think today we'll be looking at this one, and that'll be it. And I'm not sure how long the video is going to be, but at least we'll have something for you to enjoy. So this is looking at the Mini Art Austin Armoured Car 3rd Series. It's an interior kit, so it's a beauty. And as you know, we've already done the chassis or the frame. We've built up the engine, its transmission. Let me just get the light on because we do. And we've got the exhaust and everything on here. Now, as you can see from what I'm doing here, I'm completely breaking free of the instructions. Reason being, there's a lot of silly suggestions, I think, which is quite normal for mini art kits. I'm not knocking mini art, but it just seems, you know, you've got this chassis to put together like this, and one of the first things I tell you to do is fit this steering box with the steering column. So therefore you will have a steering column sticking out here, and it's just going to get broken off. It's going to get in the way. It's going to prevent you building the chassis square and everything. So I haven't done that, and what I've done, you can see I've put a red dot. Any parts that I haven't used, I've put a red dot by them. So going on through, we've built up the engine, we've built up the clutch mechanism and all that, and we've built this up. We've put the water pump in, we've added the exhaust downpipe, and then what I've done is gone in and built up the silencer and added that to this sort of small subframe, if you like, so that it's a complete engine assembly that we can just drop in, and you can still get it in. You don't need to do it like this. And I think this is a far better way of doing it. And what we'll do, we'll prime and paint this and then fit it to the chassis, all done. Now, the build sequence again goes a little bit silly. We've got this thing here. I'm not even sure what it is. It looks like a rear light or something. But as you can see here, it's sticking up on this tiny little piece of photo etch. It's just going to keep getting snapped off. So, you know, don't put it on yet. These two little brackets here, you can see them sticking out here. Okay, they're going to get snapped off. You've got this lever here, a handbrake or whatever it is. It's going to get snapped off. It's crazy putting all these little bits and pieces on. What we're better off doing is getting the chassis assembled, get the axles on if we can. I don't think we can. We can't get the front axle on, certainly, because the engine won't drop down in there with the axle in the way, and it can't go in from the top. It has to go in. It has to go in from underneath, I believe. Can it go in from the top? Just looking. Maybe we can put that in like that and then bring the back down. Yes, it can. It can go in from the top. We can actually feed it in like that, put those front ends of that subframe into there, and then bring the back end down. So yes, it can go in from the top, so we can actually fit the spring. What we'll do an experiment, and if we find that we can't do something, then you'll not make the same mistake as me. So what I want to do now is going forward here. We've got this little unit here built up as well, which is this little step here. I'm not going to put the radiator on yet because it's going to be sticking out in the way. What I want to do is concentrate on getting these leaf springs on initially. We'll get this rear bumper on as well because it'll help save everything getting knocked around. And then we can make sure the leaf springs are also square, because it's okay having the chassis square and flat to the ground, but if your leaf springs all over the place, your axles are going to end up like that. So we're going to get that done. We're not going to be putting any of this on yet because obviously the subframe is not fitted, and also this bracket here, we'll put a red mark by that one because we're not going to be able to fit that because that goes onto the chassis and onto the subframe. So we're going to put a red dot there because we can't fit that one. We can fit this little one here, and we can fit this one here, but we can't fit that one. And obviously we're not going to fit that pipe yet, so that's going to be left out as well. Okay, because that's going between the engine and the chassis. And we've also got these two cross members which go in the chassis. One goes right at the front, one goes just at the back, and they're not fitted because obviously they're going to get broken off. and then none of this is going to get fitted here. This is the rear steering mechanism, which just seems a bit daft. There's also, where's that little piece of photo etch there? That's not going on because that's going to get broken off. It just, some of these people that do these build sequences, I just don't understand it. So what I want to do for the first part of this video is get these leaf springs fitted and make sure everything stays nice and square, and that it sits evenly on those 4 leaf springs. And then we can start looking at axles, I think, because we've got all this stuff to go in here, but that depends on the subframe being in place, certainly for the forward ones. So yeah, we'll cross these bridges as we come to them, and go from there. It looks like we don't have the option. We could make it steer. I'm not sure. We could make it steer. We could just fix the wheels in a steer position. We shall see. But we've got to build up the rear axle. That's a multi-part, so that's going to have to be built up and left to dry. Sometimes what I do with these is drill through them and put a piece of brass just to make sure everything's straight. But we'll see how we go. So I think we'll get these springs in and we'll get that axle built up, and we'll see where we go from there, see what sort of time it is and how much time we got left. I'm ever so sorry, but hopefully next week we'll return to normal. But as I say, some of you will know why things have gone the way they've gone. So I'm going to get these springs off, get them cleaned up. There'll probably be a big seam line down them. Let's just get one off and have a look. I think it's going to be quite clear which is which, so we don't need to worry about numbers and stuff. But generally, with leaf springs, there is generally a big seam in the middle, which ruins the look of them. And yes, they've got this seam down the middle of them. I don't know if you can see it there. So we're going to scrape that away. So we'll just come in with a blade, just literally one by one, just come down and scrape away. First of all, I'm going to get rid of these screw gates, get the springs cleaned up, and then I'll be back. Okay, so we've got the bits off the sprue. I'm picking the chassis up. Now, be careful with these springs. I managed to snap one of these off these ends. They're very, very weak. I held the spring to scrape it, and it just snapped off, obviously, because of the force of the scraping. I keep forgetting, actually, the lovely John, where is it? Here it is. John Kelly sent me this tool, which is like a tri-bladed scraper, and I keep forgetting I've got it. And they're absolutely brilliant, these things, for scraping away seams. It's just the tri. I don't know what make it is or whatever, but you probably got it on eBay or something. I'm sure John will comment in the comments. But it's a great little tool, and I keep forgetting I've got it, and I keep it over there out the way so it doesn't get all marked and everything, and then forget I've got it. So here I've actually just used a knife just to scrape away all these seams. I've used one of the icky sticky sanding sticks, and then finally gone over with a drop of Tamiya extra thin. You can see it's got a slight gloss to it, and that just sort of takes away any sanding marks or shavy bits or whatever. So what I'm going to do is start with the rear end. So the rear springs, you can get them all off the sprues, don't worry about it, you won't get them mixed up because they can't go together wrong. So with the chassis upside down, that one is going to go in there. So you've got this semicircular sort of loop's going to go in there. And then you've got on here, there is a square lug that's going to go into a square hole, or rectangular, should I say, like that. Okay, so that's all going together, so that's got to go up in there. And then I'm going to grab a drop of Tamiya extra thin. Now some of you will be aware that I have had issues lately with Tamiya extra thin. So I was on the live stream with Moss on Monday night, and someone suggested that, well, actually a few people said, has the acetone evaporated from your extra thin? So I've added a drop of acetone to see what happens. So we shall see what happens. Okay, I'm going to put another drop on there just to make sure it's gone in, because these need to be, they don't need to be mega strong, but they need to be firm enough to support the mould and be able to handle it being picked up and down and everything. It wouldn't be a bad idea here to get the axle to place across, but the trouble is, as we can see, as we've seen just now, the axle is multi-part, so we're not going to be able to see. However, saying that, B17, it's a great number, isn't it? B17 looks like it goes on the centre of the same mounts. So if we measure B17 with our calipers here. So there is B17. And if I go from inside to outside, that'll give me the centers. So we go there. Yeah, it's about 29 and a half, 30 mil. So when I put the other one on, I'm going to put a drop of extra thin on here first, which is something I never do. I'm noticing a lot of modelers actually put the extra thin on first, especially when they're doing larger parts, and then they put the parts together. Well, that's not really how it's supposed to be done. It doesn't work, especially if you're in warmer climates. So if you are finding that you're having trouble gluing your parts together doing it that way, then it's not the glue. Okay, so that's going to sit on there like that. Just like so. Okay, and they're in like that. And then we can measure here, and we should find that the centers are roughly... Okay, that one needs to come in a touch. I can see that it's not square. It still needs to come in a touch more. Just looking along the back of down the length of the chassis. It's not a very positive location, so it's sort of up to you to make sure they're square. Be careful you don't get them like that, or your axle will be over one way. There we go, that's good. Okay, so that's roughly correct, and I'm looking at it and it kind of looks square. What you can do is get a square block like I have here and put that along the side of it and just have a look to see if it's it's looking sort of parallel to the block. That one perhaps needs to come in a touch. Alright, so that's that done. Now this rear bumper there's two pins on this rear cross member, you can see here. And there's two holes in there, and those holes were about 0.8mm diameter. And these pins are 1mm diameter, so I've just touched them with a 1mm drill just to open them up a bit. And also, as you can see, there's one here, there's an ejector pin mark, and there's one there, but that one was proud on my model, so it'll probably be the same on yours. And that affects the fit, so make sure you get the right way up. You can see on the outside we have these little, I'm assuming they're little marker lights or something. Let's have a look on the box front. And we can't see them. Have a look on the box side. They're tucked away, you can't see them anyway, so I'm not even sure what they are. But we've got this bumper. Make sure those little divots on the little bumps on the side there are facing down. Excuse my dirty hands, guys. I've been working on my car, one of the cars, and I've got dirty hands, and I'm doing exactly what I say not to do. On smaller parts it's okay, but when I see people do it on bigger parts, I kind of think, why are you doing that? Because by the time you get the parts together, the glue has dried, especially if you're in a warmer climate. Here we go. Okay. I see what that is now. That's the outer pivot for the spring. That's what it is. It's not marker lights. Okay, so that bumper has to go on after the spring. Well, that doesn't, because it will just drop in, won't it? So I'm not sure if it's a bumper or if it's just a bracket to support the springs. In reality, it's not even touching the spring really. There we go. They're on. Okay, so I'm just going to check. I'm going to put this down. Oh, and it's very difficult to check. But I just wanted to see, because this cross member is in the way, I just wanted to see if it was square. If I grab a sanding stick, which is pretty flat, that's not tall enough. Let's get two sanding sticks, which again are pretty flat. And we can see that with it sat on those two leaf springs, the front chassis rails aren't up in the air, so we know we're pretty good, we're pretty parallel with the bottom of the chassis, so that's a good thing. Just quickly check those centers again, and yeah, we're good. Approximately is good enough. So that's that. Right, now let's move on and have a look at these fronts. I've got to be careful with these because I snapped one off, didn't I? So which is the one I snapped? That's the one I snapped. So that one is going, you can see you've got these front eyes are set off to one side. So this one is going in there. So we've got this lug on the back here, and that's going to control how far in this spring hanger goes into the chassis. Wow. Typical mini art, very, very fiddly. As we can see, that back end's gone in, and you can see that square lug is basically controlling how far over it goes. So we can pull the front round. I'm going to grab a dropper quick setting. Just get that on there just to make it stay in place. That's why I've used the quick setting. That's cool. And then I'm going to put the other side in. Again, that's just going to slide in until it comes up against that stop, which is there. Okay, this one's being a bit awkward. Okay, I haven't got the spring hanger high enough in the chassis. So what we need to do here is just look on here to see if there's any flash or anything. And yes, there's a mould seam there, look. So I'm going to scrape away. Try not to break it. It's also very, very flimsy. Typical mini art style. Just going to scrape away some of that plastic there, just to get rid of that mould seam. And that should help it go in easier. There we go. It needs to go right to the top. And that tiny little mould seam was what was stopping it going in. It's still not happy. What I'm going to do is cut away. I'm going to cut away some of this lug because it's not happy going into that chassis. I've got a brand new blade here, guys, because this is also flimsy. You don't want to be trying to cut stuff with a sort of anything other than optimal blade because you'll just break it. There we go, that's gone in lovely now. So before we actually glue anything, that cross member is still in the way. Yes, that cross member is still in the way. Bloody thing. Right, so what we'll do is we'll grab one sanding stick, which is pretty parallel. So I'll hold those down at the back. I've got an absolute minute amount of play in that one. So what I'm going to do, which is the one that's glued, that one's not glued, so I'm going to put some extra thin quick setting in there, give that a little squeeze. Okay. Lovely. And I'm just going to quickly check the front axle is part B4. I think B is the major sprue on this, which is going to be common. So there is the spring, the front axle B4, and the centers of those pins are, what does measure to the inside of one and the outside of the other, and that will give you the centers. So that's 20.75. We can just quickly look on here. We can see that if I go from the outside of one, it needs to be the inside of the other, so that one needs to come out a touch. But they can both come out a touch. There we go, that's perfect. Again, we can put this on the ground. it needs to be held up to keep it off that bloody cross member so that it's square, but we can put a block up next to it just to have a look and see that the springs look square. I'm tempted not to glue these back ends in yet, because as it is I can manipulate the springs to get them square and fit the axle nicely. So I've only glued the front ends and not those back ends, and I'm just going to quickly check before we do anything here, can I still get this engine in? Yes, I can. It looks like we'll still be able to come in from underneath actually, because the axle is there, so that's cool. Okay, so there we are. I'm just looking along the length of the chassis just to look at these springs, checking they're square. I know a few of you have asked for videos about truck chassis, and I want to do something with a very large truck with lots and lots of wheels, but unfortunately it's Russian and they don't meet with much favour amongst our Western viewers, unfortunately, because it's a subject of a Russian vehicle, which is, I guess understandably, people get upset. So why upset people if I can avoid it? So I'm not going to be doing that one just yet. Right, so here we have our engine and we've got our loose springs fitted, and remember these rear joints aren't glued. That will allow me to manipulate them going forward. So that's that. So we can cross those bits off. They're done. That's done. Now these here, I'm just thinking actually I should have done these, shouldn't I? These bits here, DA10 and DA5 and DA6. DA10 I can't do. DA5 and 6 are going to go in the top of the chassis here. So I'm going to leave those off as well because they're going to affect me putting the chassis down flat. You must be thinking, why are you bothering to build this model? Because you're leaving everything off. You will see. I'm going to get the I want to get all the suspension done. Now these bits here, they're obviously going to sit in there and they're going to be very fragile, so I'd rather get the axles done first, get it sat on its wheels, or at least sat on its axles, and then go from there. So these pedals, they're going to get broken off. Those pedals are going to get broken off, that's going to get broken off, and that's going to get broken off. So we'll leave that. Alright, and then we'll go over the page. And then we can see we've got lots of bits and pieces here now. These rods are all connecting into those pedals that I haven't fitted, and they are the rear end steering. So I'll be doing the metal rod with the PE. Okay, so you will enjoy that. But I'm not going to be putting these in yet because I can't, because I don't have anything to attach them to. This one here, this is going to the rear steering box. I can't fit that one yet because I don't have either steering box in. So we're going to move on to the axles. So I think what I'm going to do is just put a red dot there and a red dot there because none of that's done. So I'm going to get these parts off for these axles. We'll get the differential together first. That's just gluing 2 halves. And then we'll look at how good the rest of it fits. Okay, we've got the parts off and cleaned up. That part there takes a lot of special attention to clean up because it's got about 5 sprue gates on it and it's obviously very slim. So here we go. The axle halves are going together. These are parts, what are they? They are CK17 and they are both the same. So they're both CK17, so you don't have to worry about getting them mixed up. I'm putting plenty of cement in here because I want a nice weld joint, and as you can see by the movement of my fingers we have some play. So what I'm trying to do is set them sort of in the middle. Okay, which means this plate that fits the spring is going to be either in line or out of line or whatever with the differential. It looks like the differential is going to point up slightly, so that's fine. And then we're going to do the other side. Okay, and I'll do that one the same. And what I'm going to do is grab 2 metal blocks like this, and I'm going to put this axle down on these metal blocks. In fact, I won't use the corroded side. And I'm going to make sure that those flats are aligned. Okay, and then I can add some cement. If we had a better fit, we wouldn't have to worry about the blocks. If you don't have blocks, use a couple of pencils or a couple of sanding sticks. It's just to try and make sure that these flats are aligned, because obviously if they're like this, then obviously it won't fit the springs very nicely. But I'm just going to put that side down on there, hold it flat, put this one down on there, push it flat, and make sure they're aligned. And then also we need to make sure that when we look at the axle that way and that way, it's all in line. Otherwise we're going to have the wheels like this, or pointing forwards, backwards, you know. Never a fan of these multi-part axles, because they're always, these are pretty good because the locations are pretty good, but I can't remember what I built recently and it was bloody awful. There we go. So I'm just going to grab a straight edge, and that should help us to eye up and see that everything's good. So we're kind of happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, so now it's these axle ends, these brake drums. Make sure you get the right ones. You've got B38 and B39. You can see that on here there is a little tab with a hole in it. That's for our brake actuator, or lever or whatever. I think it's cable brakes, rod brakes. So we're going to make sure, I can see I've got a great big mould seam on there that I haven't removed. I don't know how I missed that. So I'm going to go into there and get that out of there. There we go. So these basically have to face forward. So if I put that on there, that's wrong because that is facing back. So that one is going to go on this side. Okay, so that's going on there. And then this one is going to go on there. They're a nice snug fit, so push them on nice and tightly and they just stay on their own. Okay, and then we're going to have to make sure they're nice and square. So what I'm going to do with these is put some cement on them. Okay, make sure they're nicely cemented. And then I'm also, with these, I'm going to make sure you can see this one here, that line is going off on an angle, and this one here, it's pretty much parallel. So I'm going to twist this one so that it's parallel with the spring pad. Okay, just like so. There we are. Just get that glued in there like that. Now, to make sure they're parallel, we can use a couple of blocks. Get these pieces out of the way so we don't break them. So we can look at that, and we can look at the blocks and see if they're parallel and everything. We can also put the blocks like this, and then we can roll, he says, we can roll the axle along and just look at them to see that they're parallel. Okay, so best wait for the glue just to gel off, and then you can sort of manipulate them and get them where you want them. But if they're not right, then your wheels ain't going to be right. So it's best to try and get them as good as you can. Okay. Again, the other thing you can do is grab a rule, and then in 2-axis put the rule up against the back of the brake drum and have a look and see. In fact, we better do it from underneath like that. Have a look and see that everything is. You can see I've got this brake drum here behind my finger is pushed up against the end of the rule, and we can see that this one here is off to this side where my thumb is. So what I'm going to do is just push the axle over until that one is central. It keeps coming back over. Okay, so I'm going to change the, there we go. And then on this angle here, we'll go that way up actually. We can do the same again. Whoopsie daisy, I don't even know which end I was on now. But you get the idea. You can just use a rule to do all sorts of things, squaring yourself up and that. Alright, but if you didn't have that differential in the way, of course you could just roll it along and look at it, but with the differential in the way, you can use the steel blocks and just roll it along and make sure that, and have a look to see that it's that they're parallel, just like so. They're always going to be tweakable to a certain extent, but not too much, or they'll just snap off. So that's that. And then we've got this diff nose piece. Now this is also timed. It's got a D-shaped hole. So I'm going to put the cement in first because it's quite a snug fit, and the cement will almost act like a lubricant. And as you can see, you've got some play in that one as well. So I'm going to turn that so that it's kind of true. Alright, just like so. And then we've got this piece here, B17. Now you can see that on this end we've got like a tourniquet or something. So that's going to go to that side. So that's going to go down in there and down in there. Wow, I need my tweezers. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to put a drop of cement in each hole, and then I can drop one end in like that. Oops. God, this thing is fiddly. This kit is definitely not for the beginner. Oops. There we are. And then that end can go in as well. Come on. I've done it the wrong side, that's why it doesn't want to go. It's going in the top. I can hear you all shouting at me. This is one of the problems. If you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, guys, have a little practice first with a camera on. You know, not intended to make a video, but just see if you can actually cope with talking and building. And if you still want to go ahead, then you'll have to do what the likes of John Alec does, or Kenneth over at Norwegian Scale Modeler, and make your video and then do the talk over after. Personally, I always it's covering the drain plug. That seems a bit daft. Yeah, personally, I always do my videos like, you know, as I'm doing it, I'm talking to you. I don't bother with a script and all that stuff. It's just making work for yourself. Of course, you could always go down the plasma route with the music or whatever. There's lots of different ways of doing it, and certain viewers don't like certain things and certain viewers love certain things. So just remember, if you are thinking about starting a channel, you will not please all the people all the time. Guarantee it. Okay, so just looking at that, that looks good. Happy with that. So there we are, there's our rear axle. Now I haven't added yet the actuators because they're going to stick out and they're going to affect me getting it all lined up. So once that glue's gelled off, I'm going to have a little play with it and have a tweak around and check that everything is good. Back in a sec. Hey, now I want to get this axle on the chassis as quick as I can and make sure everything's all going to line up nicely. So just looking in the instructions, going over the page, we've got the axle going in there. We've got this unit here which goes on the back of that cross member, which I haven't fitted. So here we go. Here we're going to go back to here. I know we're darting around, guys, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, if you like. So basically, this unit here is going to go. It's just like a sort of drive brake or something. This is basically going to go. We've got a pin on there which is going to go in the hole in the chassis, and we've got a pin on here, a D-shaped pin which is going to go into a D-shaped hole in the back of that cross member, and we've also got two little pins on the sides which are going to go into those two little holes on the side of the cross member. So I'm going to apply a drop of cement. I said about people putting the cement on first, and I've done nothing but since. So I'm going to push that over to go into that hole there. Okay, and then I'm going to push this into position. There we go. So that's the two side holes lined up. It doesn't seem to want to play ball. I don't have that one lined up in there. So once again it looks like we've got an issue with a pin being too big for a hole, which is becoming a bit thin now. It's getting a bit boring. You've had that joke now a number of times. Right, let's get that to go in there. Told you this was fiddly, didn't I? Okay, so that's gone in there. Now that should slide across. There we are. It's kind of sitting on an angle for some reason. It's like this is too long here. So what I'm going to do is take it out and I'm going to cut the end off of this pin just a tad. It's all a bit superficial anyway, is the word I'm looking for, I think, because it's all going to be invisible on the finished model anyway. It's underneath. Oh, let's put some more cement in those holes. We'll put some in the middle as well. I'm going to get this to go down into there like that. There we go. Just does not want to stick into place. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to put that rear axle in. That shaft has come out of that hole again. There we go. Right, so we're going to put this, that shaft is holding that out, isn't it? We're going to put this prop shaft in, and this prop shaft, we're going to go over the page here. As you can see, it's step 19, and this prop shaft has got the tapered end. So this end here, one end has got a tapered on it, the other end is straight, as you can see. So this end here is going to go into that unit, whatever it may be. Can't even see where the flat is on that now. Flat is now up. That's going into there like that, and then this rear axle will sit. And once again we have a bloody pin that's too big for the hole it's supposed to go into. Oh, come on, Mini Art, this is becoming a joke now. So that's 1.3 and that hole is 1.2. So we'll grab a 1.3mm drill. 1.3, there we go. Open this out. This is great for people that don't have drills, isn't it? It's pretty bloody shoddy, I think. Okay, so now that should go into that hole. Yes, it does. The pin looks like it's too long, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off the end of it. Yeah, it's just not playing ball, is it? Just take some more out of that hole. Grab a pin vise. You know, stuff like this in this day and age really annoys me. From kits from the 70s and 80s, then, you know, this kind of thing. Or the short run kits, fine, but something like this, especially when you've got 8 million different versions of the same chassis. It's pretty bloody annoying. That fits in there lovely now, look. So if you are going to build one of these, I recommend you get yourself a set of drills, because you're going to need them. Okay, there we go. That's not fitting very well on those pegs on the spring either. I've already trimmed those pins down. The drive shaft has popped out. So what I'm going to do here is get some cement into there, let that capillary in do its thing. We'll get some in here as well. And on there. And then get this to all go together. This is a bloody joke. Oh, come on. Right, that's gone down on there now. So that side's in. That side doesn't want to go in. Don't tell me that prop shaft's too long. There we go. I've got both sides now gone in. The axle's sat nicely on the spring, so I'm going to get some cement in there to make sure we get a nice welded joint, because it's been hanging around a little bit before it actually got put together. And then with the tweezers, just give it a squeeze. Just make sure it's all held nicely. There we are. So the only thing to do now is to check, all this out of the way, is to check if the I've just broken that leaf spring out of there, although I never glued it, did I? So that's all right. Right. We're going to check that the spring, or the axle to chassis, is the same on both sides using this. Using the end like this, just squeeze that down. I can see that we've got this end touching the chassis, this bit here is touching the end of the axle. Okay, so if I turn it around, we've got the same. So that's all good. So everything has gone together beautifully. So taking your time, taking a bit of care, pays off. As I say, these kits, they are not for beginners in any stretch of the imagination. Right, and what I'm going to do now is just put a drop of cement on there to make sure that's in. I don't want that all falling out while we're building. So I just knocked the camera on my head then. Right. If anything, I think that prop shaft could do with a shortening slightly. I think it's a little bit too on the tight side. Or just file some off the front of the differential. So that's gone in. Right. And I'm just going to check now, is that diff? Let's get a straight edge. No, it's okay, it's just higher, so it's good. We can see with the axle down, our leaf springs at the front are still touching on both sides, so we're not inducing any twist or anything. So we can come over the page now and have a look at the front axle. Alright, we're back. So as you can see, I've built the front axle and I've fitted it. I did actually start filming it and the battery went on the camera. Well, the battery did. Well, it did actually go, yeah, because it needed recharging. I don't know what I'm thinking about here. So, anyway, I've got the axle together. These ends go on. Everything is pretty straightforward. It's all quite simple. These little bits here, you've got this, it's showing you here with this part here, DA7, it goes down in. It's also got this block on the back that goes into a square hole in the back of there, so that's cool. This little piece here just seems to be sitting there doing nothing, and as you can see, it's very, very fiddly, very fragile, very flimsy. I've also fitted those rear brake actuators as well, so they're on, they're all cool. But yeah, it's all very, very multi-part, you know, and everything. Front axle was the same issue going on. I just had to chop down the size of the pins a little bit, and I've had it between two blocks and checked that it's square. I've also checked the actual wheelbase side to side to check that it's parallel, and I've also come in and with the rule checked from the chassis, making sure we're not on a bolt or anything. We've got about 10.5mm there, and then about 10.5mm there, and what I'm doing is measuring from here, the chassis, to the outside of the mounting flange to make sure the wheels end up central. Okay, so there we go. It could actually do with coming over a little touch more, I think, just to see. We've got 10.5 there. Yes, it just needs to go over just a touch, so I'm just going to push the springs over just a touch. I've glued the back ends now as well, so I can push that over to there. That's like 10.5. Yeah, it's about right. I mean, if it's 0.1 or 0.2 of a millimetre, it's not going to notice, but it needs to be pretty good. I've decided not to go with the steering on the wheels because it would have involved lots of surgery on parts that are already absolutely minuscule. We've got a very slight turn to the right. Just pull that one back. But there we go. So that's that all done. So there we are. And I'm going to call that a day now. It's only been about 40 minutes, I'm sorry. But as I say, it's Wednesday today. I'm not going to say you're lucky to get anything because it makes it sound like, hey, you know, look who I am. But basically, I think you know what I mean when I say that. So there we go. Now these rear brake actuators, they're going to be connected with rods to this piece here. This piece here, which if you remember was sat in the chassis back here and was movable. So that's going to go back in and then connect with rods to those rods there. So that's going to be part of the brake rod system. You don't need to do it if you don't want to. You don't have to. It's all a bit superficial, but there we go. So there we are. If you don't have you know, parallel rods or whatever, you can use sanding sticks just to check that everything is hunky-dory and that it's square. If one side goes down a lot, then you're going to be out of square. If it's only a tiny little bit, the weight of the model generally takes care of that. If you put on a dio, then all the better. You just make your dio uneven to suit the uneven wheels. But the last thing you want is a model of anything, van, truck, car, anything, and have one wheel up in the air. That looks awful. So I will see you all soon. Thank you for watching. I don't quite know where we're going to go next, but I think we'll have to go back to some of these greeblies before we start fitting any bodywork. I think we're also looking at starting to get some paint on, but I want to avoid that until all this is in, because otherwise you won't be able to see what on earth I'm doing, because as you know, I'll paint it black. So I'll see you all soon. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.